not like, okay, hey, your entire application will go down, or and everything. For microservices architecture, you'll also understand about how the microservice can be architectured, what are the components which are involved, and then what are the design patterns that we will follow in my microservices. And when you're implementing such a microservices in your application, how the security needs to be handled with respect to the data, with respect to the code, with respect to the implementation, with respect to authentication, authorization, and everything. And along with the hands-on, you'll be able to see that examples. Okay. So now, as I said, so you'll also end up with having the implementation of hands-on sessions, and how do we deploy them, how do we implement all the activities, and you'll also see how these applications can be implemented. You'll also be able to notice them, and you'll have reference architectures given. So how some of the topmost business applications, like either be it as I said, Uber or either Amazon. So like these kind of applications are how these applications are working, how they have been implemented, and you're also going to take a look at how those things can be implemented here. Okay. So now what is that we're going to do is we will take a small part which is also pending. So let me finish that. So for example, if there are some applications, so let's say for example, there are some of the what are the different design patterns that we will use. So let's say for example, you want to implement any of the web application. So if you say for example, so there is something called an aggregator is an application which is running. So in case you might have been expected to extract the data from different sources, and you'll end up with using multiple APIs, right? So in order to connect to or enable those applications, you'll end up with having multiple API gateways, which can help you to connect and then able to start extracting the data, able to send the request in whatever the form, either you talk about get method or either put method or whatever it is, right? So that the API gateways are something which will help you to make any. So for example, you want to make sure that you want to create any applications to start communicating with your other applications, and if you want to make different applications to start communicating, or be it as sending some response and processing something, and you can enable all these things using API gateways. And then if you want to have different patterns, like for example, you want to have chain or chain responsibility, which means that, say for example, if service A completes, then only I want to send a request to service B, and if service B completes, and then only I want to process the service C. So likewise, you might end up with having different dependencies with previous sessions also. That is one way of pattern. Or asynchronous means that, say for example, whether irrespective of the whether other process runs or not, so all the servers can communicate with each other, but they do not have to communicate with us sequentially, which means every service to every service will continue to run. But it doesn't mean that, okay, it has to go in a sequence, like the previous example that we saw, right? So it is not that, okay, once service A complete, then only service B will be complete. Nothing will like that. So you just that, okay, hey, once you place the order, and you will receive a confirmation, and you will receive your delivery person will receive another confirmation stating that you are supposed to deliver. So it doesn't mean that, okay, you after you receive an email, only your delivery person should receive your content or anything. Nothing like that. The process will continue to work as expected, irrespective of what is happening on other applications. So in case if something fails, then somewhere fails, okay, then you make sure that, okay, continue to process, make sure that the other process will be up and running. They will be taking care of the data processing and everything, right? So we'll also have a database as well, in case if you want to deal with the database file service or shared databases, if you want to deal with, so that your multiple applications will continue to use your shared databases. You can also play around with all those options which can be enabled using these microservices. We'll also have event sourcing at the same time. Say for example, what is event sourcing? Let's say you have a presentation layer, you have different events which are happening. You might say like event is in the sense in a general way. You can consider it as event is nothing but consider it like a transaction. So for example, if you talk about web applications, you might say, hey, we have an event where someone has purchased some product. You might consider that as something called an event. So how the event will be considered? Okay, how the event is going to, the same event might have to trigger multiple transactions, right? Say for example, if you make any single transaction in a mobile app, your balance should be reduced, your transaction statements has to be updated, and you're also supposed to give a notification to the final end user also. Say for example, you might say, any transaction which creates your RBI, the government has to send the information to the RBI. Likewise, there are multiple processes which should trigger based on the same event itself. If out of these multiple events, if something is any of the event is not happening, it might end up with having some issues with your application. So likewise, you'll be able to implement all these activities using different. So let's say, for example, if your internet banking is not working properly, if your transactions are not working properly, you might end up with having a lot of issues. Yeah, let the mobile applications to run at least. Because of that reason, I cannot say my data is not working, my data is not available, right? So likewise, we'll be able to make use of this event sourcing activities and everything. Be it any external system, if you're in any cloud network or if you're in any other network, you can make use of this using any other networks also. It's not that okay, you'll end up with like dealing with your application within a single network. But on top of it, you'll also have a branch. So what is the branch? So which means you'll maintain the dependency with one or more independent microservices. You say like okay, hey, B is a parent and A is a child, and A will have a dependency with C, and then will be having dependency with C. So these kind of applications can be implemented using a branch principle. So likewise, you'll be able to deal with these applications in microservices. Okay. So we also have a few more examples, like especially say for example, if you want to implement using CQRS, typically we call it as a command query responsibility and segregator. So if there is some commands which are getting updated, especially for the internet banking, unless otherwise if you don't make the update, unless otherwise if you don't get your final outcome, you're not supposed to make your applications to move forward, right? So which means, say for example, you take an example of a social network, for example, and it's not that okay, you're supposed to make every transaction to, say for example, you tweeted something. It's not that everyone who is supposed to be subscribed has to be intimated immediately, right? So that's okay. Let the other people to get the outcome maybe after some time, maybe after some seconds or anything. So but they're supposed to get it as soon as possible. It doesn't mean that okay, it's supposed to happen like a transaction databases where it's supposed to get all the updates within few fraction of seconds, right? So likewise, based on different type of applications, you are choosing different ways of implementing these applications. And we also have circuit breaker as well. So you have in case if you want to deal with any kind of like circuit where you, in case if something fails, you want to make sure that okay, all the entire application is not going to move forward. Say for example, if you take a bus transactions, for example, and you're not supposed to make any other transaction to go on, because without you confirming the ticket of a person, you cannot say like I will give a ticket to another people, right? Because there might be a duplicate, so only one customer might end up with getting the duplicate for one ticket itself that you are purchased, and the person might not leave you stating that okay, I don't have a ticket even though I got the confirmation, right? So likewise, there are different applications which will use these different types of patterns based on the whatever the requirements. You will be choosing those design patterns and you'll be implementing those things according to that. So let's take a look at a small example of how do we create a web application. If you see here, I'm going to create a sample web application. Okay, so I've opened a Visual Studio. Let me just quickly show you that. So you can see your Visual Studio can be implemented here. And in case if you see, I want to create it as a container instead of making it as some other application. Instead of making it as a normal application, I want to enable as a container. So now what is it I can do? I can quickly go to, let me just open this. So now if you see here, I'm going to create a sample web application. So I'll go to view. I can search for Solution Explorer. I'm going to create a normal web application. If you see, the moment that I select this, you'll be able to see the web application. So now if I want to make any changes, I'll go to page and I'll go to any of the index page or anything. For example, I'll just quickly make some small change. We'll see how do we deploy that. Okay, so let me just quickly make some change. Let's say, for example, I'm going to learn about. I'll just make some change. Um, Learn about microservices likewise. So now what is that I'll do? I'll just quickly make some change and I'll just rebuild the solution. What are the solution that I have built here? So I'll just say like I'll just right click and say like rebuild. Once again, let the application to rebuild. Yeah. So I'll just try to publish it in case. So what is it I'll do? I'm going to publish this. Maybe I can also continue to publish in any of the web application. So if I have a VM, I can publish it over there. If I have something else, I can also submit it. You can see that I've already integrated with Git repo. I can continue to maintain all my code and everything within this Git repo itself. So what I'll do is I'll just continue to I'll just try to deploy this small web application in any of the maybe in Azure cloud. So since it's Visual Studio and I have already have Azure cloud already created, I'll set up as Azure. In case if you want to do it from a Docker repository, also you can start doing that as part of Docker registry. So I'll just enable it as a normal web application in this case instead of doing anything like this. I'll say next. Okay, now it'll ask for whatever the subscription that you're supposed to create. And if you don't have any web application, again you can see you have an option. So you can also start creating a web application here. So I don't have any web application which is already hosted in the cloud app, and I'll be able to provide all the details over here. I can create some sample resource group. I can take any hosting plan which is available. Maybe I'll go for a free hosting plan. I'll go for the free hosting plan. I'll just say okay. Now I'll say create. So it's nothing but it's going to run in the Azure cloud, which has got my subscription. It's going to create app service, everything within here itself. I don't need to even log in into that web application. It might take a couple of minutes because it has to create all the virtual machines. It has to create all the containers, everything in the backend. It'll take as a first time activity. One time activity will take some little time. Okay, so it is now created. If you see here, I also have multiple options of deployment slots. I don't want to talk about all these things. I'll just say finish. So which means I'm going to create this web application. I'm just quickly going to deploy into a web application which is created in the Azure hosting. Okay, let me just quickly create it. Okay, so this is getting added. So once the deployment added, you'll be able to start deploying your application. So meanwhile, there is also one small request. So I'm going to publish this web application. So if you see here, the web application is now getting deployed. Okay, so let it get deployed. It will take some couple of minutes to get deployed. So that once it is deployed, I'll give you. So all the Git repo, maintaining the Git repo, everything is already been taken care, right? So now you don't need to worry about all the implementations and everything. So earlier it used to take very long time. Nowadays we don't need to. It's just within few fraction of minutes, I'll be able to build a web application. I'll be able to start deploying it. I'll be able to start looking at the results, whatever the way that I'm comfortable with, right? So I don't need to take too much of time to deploy all these applications. So you can see within 5 minutes I'll be able to create a web application. Within 5 minutes I'll be able to deploy it. I don't need to wait for any other admins or anyone, right? So I can do all these things very easily. Okay, it's still publishing. It will take some time because as a one-time activity, it will take some time to publish. So if you see here, this application is deployed and it is getting opened here. You can see this is being deployed. All of you should be able to access this web application now. You can see this is a web application. You can see learn about microservices. This is what the web application that we created. So once it is created, obviously you must come to your Azure portal. You must make sure that you'll be deleting your resource group because unless otherwise you don't delete the resource group unnecessarily, it will be paying. It'll be costing in the backend. So once you're done with it, you can start deleting your application and everything. So you'll be able to close all those activities. Okay, it's pretty easy and it's very straightforward. You can implement these web applications very easily using. So all the backend applications like DevOps and everything can be integrated very easily. You'll be able to take care of them in a very few fraction of seconds. Okay, yeah, cool. So I think that's pretty much it that I have to cover. Thank you all. Thank you very much, and hope to see you in any of the coming sessions. Thank you.